All right, here we are back in our Illustrator file. We are on our third artboard. So just like we've done in the past, we're going to start off by creating a new layer. So Command L, Control L if you're on a PC. And that is, we're going to label this polar grid and say OK. Now over here on my layers panel, I want to make sure you have your other two layers locked. Your regular square is locked and your square grid is locked. And we are on the polar grid. Okay. That being said, I'm just gonna, sorry, I have to move a few windows here as I'm working. All right, so polar grids are a type of grid that can be used in so many creative ways. And they are great working in combination with other grids when we get into combining grids. Even though they appear complex and more complex sometimes than a regular rectangular grid, which we're more comfortable and normal, used to seeing, they're extremely easy to create here in Illustrator. And it's thanks to this polar grid tool. So if we go here on the left, you probably still have your rectangular grid up because that's where we left off yesterday. If you click on it and scroll down, you'll see the polar grid tool sits right below the rectangular grid tool. And of course, all of these are hidden beneath the line segment tool. So I'm going to click on the polar grid tool. And it works a lot like the rectangular grid. In other words, you can do them manually or you can use the options key. So if I go upper left corner, I hold my shift key down and I pull it out. I can make a manual polar grid, and I'm holding the key down yet. I'm holding it down. I can use my up and down arrows to make more circles, radial circles, or less. And you can see how the design begins to be like more concave or convex, depending on how many radials are added. And I can go left and right and add different rays. Now mine are uneven because I was playing with this earlier, and I'm guessing yours might look really even. So let's just take a look at what it looks like if you haven't been messing around with the configuration. So I'm going to go back to the radial grid. This time I'm going to go in my upper left-hand corner, make sure that my lines are intersecting with my smart guides, and click. Oops, hold on a minute. And click. Make sure you're on the canvas, and the polar grid option tools are going to come up. Again, you can choose where you orient the beginning of your grid. I'm going to use the upper left-hand corner again. And we can now import our desired values. So remember the number of concentric dividers you have. Those are the rings that are going around as circles. So for example, if I want to do it evenly, I know I want, let's say I want 12. And I want to do 12 radial so it's consistent and I don't want to skew it at all. I would have the skew here at 0, which would make it so looking at the default size width, it's saying width, we're not going to do the, we're going to do the pixel, the size of our canvas, which is 1200. 1200 is our default width and height. So let's just take a look at what that gives us, right? So there's your very consistent, just like our original square we made. So it's 12 by 12, 12 radials, 12 circles, all equispaced. But just like our other irregular grid, we can decide to go with just even 12. We can also, I'm going to delete that, decide to make it irregular. And just like we did with our irregular square, we can go, let's say I want 6 concentric dividers. And let's say I want 8 radial dividers. And I want to play with the skew this time. So I can do, again, positive or negative. So when we're going with, let me look at my notes here. I have some things that I'm making sure that I want to share with you on this. 0 means your grid is regular. Negative values will make the gaps between the circles increase towards the outside. That's the negative values. And positive values will do the opposite and make the gaps between the circles increase towards the center. So for the concentric dividers, negative increase towards the outside. So let's try that. Let's take a look at that. Negative 56. And then radial dividers, other rays going from the center to the outside with this skew value set to 0. If you want to have radial dividers going across the whole grid on a diameter, you'll need to input an even number here. So I'm going to say actually 10. I'm going to say I want 10. You can easily base the number of dividers on the angle you want between the rays. So if you don't want to do any calculation, you can go to this field and type 360 slash, and then the angle you want. Let's say I want a 45. Try that. Say okay. And there we go. So now all my radial dividers are on a 45-degree angle. And you can see that my radial lines are getting narrower as they go in the center and wider as they come out to the back, out to the outside. Okay, so try that. Try a couple different variations of that. You always want to create your grid the same size as your artboard, so make sure you're doing that. And we want to experiment and try lots of different types and see what we come up with. Basically, you want to make sure that it's always connected to the centered aligned when you're using the selection tool. Use your alignment tools up here in our control panel and make sure. Now, one thing we want to check, because sometimes when we're making these radials don't always intersect with the edge of the outline. Mine are on this particular one, but they don't always. Let me just see if they all are. It's like a weird glitch. So mine are. So if anyone is having them where they're not, let me know. Let me see if I can try another one and see if I can make it happen. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do the radial, let me try show you one more version, is we can do a positive. So they're changing direction here. And then this time, let's go 10 and let's skew it versus making them all even. I'm going to say, okay. All right, so here's an example. I don't think this one for me turned out great. I would probably readjust this, but you can see how it's very irregular, right? The smaller it comes on the outside, the lines are closer on the outside. And of course, my radial rays are asymmetrical. But let me just see how my rays, if they're intersecting or if they're not meeting. Okay, these are. Maybe it's a bug they've fixed because I've had it happen in the past, but I don't see it happening. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about it then. I don't think it's happening anymore. Okay. So I'm not loving that one, so I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to go and do one more. Let's go back. Let's see, I'm going to do 8. I'm going to go back to, I like it skewing negative, honestly. I like that look of it getting narrower as it goes in. And here I'm going to do my 360 slash, let's do 30-degree angle and see what that gives me. Oh, let's undo. It's still giving me the irregular. Let's see. Oh, it's because I had this not at 0. Okay, that has to be at 0 if I do that. That's what I did wrong. So 360/30. Make sure that the skew is at 0 here because we're adding the skew in up here. And then say, okay, there we go. Now it's turning out. So there's a lot of different, as you can see, there's so many different ways. Let me just check let me zoom in again and see if these are meeting. And they are. Okay, good. I think they fixed a little bug that used to happen. All right, good. All right, so we got that all aligned. Any questions? Is everyone getting that okay? Check my chat, make sure we're all good. All right, good. All right, so lots of different things. So we're going to move into isometric grids and hexagonal grids. Let me switch us over to then. Oh, actually, let's do one other thing. Let's lock our polar grids layer once we have one that we like. Go ahead and lock it. And we're going to come back over here to our 5th. I think we're in our 5th. No, 4th. Yeah. 4th. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be in our selection tool. We're going to Command L, create a new layer. And this one we're going to call isometric. Okay. So we're on our 4th one. We're going to go isometric. So isometric and hexagonal grids are extremely useful. We are going to do a whole project on isometric grids for our next project. Our project 3 is an isometric design. But we're going to touch on them here as well. So I'm going to introduce them here. We're going to go deeper into them in our next project. But for now, we're going to focus on just how do we make an isometric grid. They are extremely useful because we're using the 120, 60, or 30 degrees as our angles that we're using in our work. It uses half triangles, diamonds, hexagons, and you can really create some beautiful hexagonal patterns using an isometric or hexagonal grid. Isometric and hexagonal grids have the same structure. They only differ in the orientation of the hexagonal shapes within the grid. Hexagonal grids are based on hexagons with horizontal bases. They are most commonly used in patterns with 6 tile directions, whereas isometrical grids have a vertical axis of 120 degrees, angles between 3 axes used to create designs or illustrations in an isometric proportion. And at this point, I'm guessing you're all pretty familiar with isometric design, which is usually used with architecture or buildings or products. It's like, or Minecraft, you know, if you guys are fans of Minecraft, that's your isometric world. That's what an isometric grid looks like. Okay, so let's go ahead and make one. Without further ado, click over here on our polar grid, and we're going to go back to the rectangular grid tool. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to click on it and use the options. And we're going to start by making the default size twice the size of our artboard. So we're going to go to 2400 by 2400. Next, we're going to set the horizontal dividers to 0. Okay. And we're going to go into the vertical dividers. We're going to create the vertical desires to create the modules in our desired size. So in our case, we're still sticking to the 100 pixel wide modules. So we're going to need 23 dividers because to make 24 modules. So because again, we're doing 100 pixel modules. So 23 dividers, which will give us 24 modules. And we're going to go ahead and hit OK, click OK. Wait a minute, hold on. I just realized I still have the Make sure your skew is at 0. I did not do that. Make sure your skew is at 0. So 0 skew, 23 dividers for the vertical, 0 for horizontal. There we go. So here is, now we're going to align it to our artboard. So I have it selected. I'm going to go up here to align. And so now it's center aligned on my artboard. I'm going to zoom out a little so you can see that. So yours should all look like this. Then we're going to rotate it. So we're going to do Command R, Control R if you're on a PC. Oops. Hold on a minute. Command R. Why's my rotate not showing up? I think my window is going somewhere else because I have 2 monitors open. Where's my rotate window going? Why am I not seeing my rotate window? Okay, double click on rotate. I don't know, mine came back. I think because sometimes I have 2 monitors and windows kind of go haywire. So you want to click R and press enter. And in the rotate dialog, you want to enter an angle of 60 degrees and click OK. So you want to be at 60 degrees, then click OK. And this is what your artboard should look like. Now we're, while still having the grid selected, we're going to press 0. Or actually not 0, O, sorry, O. Enter to get the reflect tool. And set the axis to vertical and click on the copy button. So we have the axis to vertical, and you're not going to hit OK, you're going to hit copy. This is very important because we're making a copy. And it should now look like this. Okay. Now we need to add our vertical lines. We're going to select the grid tool again. And I'm going to select it in my upper left-hand corner. And select the rectangular grid tool, set the grid size of the artboard. So we're going to go back to our 1200 artboard size. Okay, we're back to a 1200 artboard. So we're going to, with the number of vertical dividers required to create the modules of the same that we've created in this grid, we're going to create 100 pixels wide. So we're going to need 11 vertical dividers. So our horizontal dividers is 0. Our vertical dividers is going to be 11. That will give us 12 modules. I say OK. And we're going to go ahead and use our align tools and align it to our artboard. So now you should see something like this. Now, there's a little things you need to bear in mind when we're working with an isometric or hexagonal grid. Due to the proportions of an irregular hexagonal, only one of the dimensions can be a whole number. So it depends on where you're working with if you have to decide what to do about it, if you're just creating a separate design or an illustration in the size of the artboard. If you're not concerned about its edges, you can just leave it as is. And what I mean by that is if we zoom in and you can see how we have partial elements of the next grid up here at the top and partial elements of the grid down here at the bottom, right? It's not creating a full square on the top and bottom. And it's creating exactly a half square on the left and right. So that's what I'm talking about. So if that doesn't matter, we can leave it as is. If we wanted to have an even square, equal edges on all the edges because of the type of design we're doing, we are going to want to fix this. So in other words, if you're going to make a design that needs to be tiled, for example, if you're going to create a design that's a repeating pattern, it needs to be the same. It can't be like this. So sometimes this has to be fixed, sometimes it doesn't. We're going to go ahead and fix it so you understand how to do that. And then if you can make those choices as you're designing your own grids moving forward, how important it is. So we're going to select the grid. Zoom out a minute so you can see everything. You can see this is why we had our boards so far apart from each other, so that we could have room for our grids to go beyond the artboard. So we're going to zoom into the middle of our artboard. Okay. Actually, I'm refraining. I'm just grabbing the vertical divider grid. So I'm grabbing just the one that's the size of the artboard. I'm selecting it from the edge. And now I can adjust it to where I want it to fit, which is changing the size, obviously, of my design. You do not want to hold the shift key down because we want to make it, we don't want it to stay square. We want to change it from a square to a rectangle to fit the perfect intersection. So you can see what I'm doing is adjusting my vertical grid to line up at the intersection of the square at the top and down here at the intersection of the square at the bottom. See that? Now, so that's what we want to do. So now we need to clean up like all of these extra parts. So now we know that's where we want it. We're going to ultimately change our artboard and go through and go through cleaning up all these extra edges. Hold on a second. I see there's a question. Is it possible to do this with the perspective grid tool, or is that something different? That is something different. The perspective is taking one object and putting it into perspective. We're actually making a flat grid. We're not making a perspective grid. It will look like perspective as we're doing it, but it's not in perspective. The perspective tool is making things skewed into perspective, if that makes sense. Okay, good. Good question, though. Very good question. All right, let me look at my notes so I don't want to forget a step. Now, we're going to select all three rectangle grid groups. So we're going to back out so we can see everything. Oops, backed out of the wrong thing. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I just lost my note. All right. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I lost my place for a second. We're going to select all three grids. So I have all three grids selected like this. We're going to now go to the Pathfinder tool. And so your Pathfinder tool is right here on the side toolbar. Okay. And we're going to click on the outline button. It's down here. I'm going to hover over it so you can see it. This is the outline button. And we're going to enter the isolation mode for this group. And we are going to press the command, press Command Shift H, and we can hide our artboards. Okay, so we're just looking at our grids that will allow you to get rid of the, and we're going to go ahead and we've selected the outline. So we've outlined this. Now, once you've done that, oops, undo. Let's give it a thin stroke before you let go of it. We're going to go over here to the stroke and just make it a black thin stroke so you can see your design. Make it black. Mine is white. Why is mine white? I don't want it white. I want it black. There we go. Okay, so it should look like this. I see a hand up. Oh yeah, Ikra.
I think I may have gotten a bit lost. So on like the project thing on Blackboard that I'm following along with, when it says select this grid and zoom into a middle point on either top or bottom edge, can you just re-show that maybe, or like explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Let me finish this and I'll go back through that, okay? I'll go through this and I'll do it one more time, if that's okay.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so what we've done right now is we've outlined our grid. So now we're cleaning it up. So what we want to do is basically take and select with our direct select tool all of the edges, and we're deleting them. I'm selecting everything outside of my grid and I'm deleting it. This is getting rid of all these bits that I don't need. I'm going to zoom in because I don't want these. I'm going to zoom in because I don't want these. So now I have this clean isometric grid. Okay, I can do Command H. We can exit the isolation mode and view outline, view the outline, and I want to view, zoom out, window, artboards. I want to view the artboards again. There we go. Okay, wait. Why am I not seeing my artboards again? What am I doing wrong?
It's the same thing that you did to go in the thing. Command Shift H, I think.
Oh, you know what? I'm forgetting the shift. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? It's the H, the shift, Command Shift H. Okay, so I'm back on the artboards. And so you can see our artboard is a different size than our grid, and that's okay. So here's our grid saved. I'm going to close that out. Isometric grid is where we want it. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to lock it. If I want to make my artboard the size of my grid, I can do that. So we can go into to the artboard, click on the artboard. That's the key over here on the toolbar on the lower left. And I can pull it down and align it with my grid and say, okay. So now my artboard is the same. Okay, I'm backing up so you can see everybody. There it is. Okay, so now I'm going to go through it one more time because I think it might be helpful to see where how we do it, because I realize it's a little confusing. And we're going to let me do it one more time. I'm going to keep this to the side. I'm going to go over here and do it on this one more time. You're not doing it twice. I'm just doing it one more time to walk through it. So let me go new layer. Okay, so we're going to start with the grid and we're going to do 2400, 0, and 23. We're going to align it. Okay, so we're aligned. Command R, enter, will give us the move. And we're going to start with 60. I'm going to zoom out because I want to remember what part we were confused at. 60, say okay. Oh, Command R, what did I do? I didn't put it in the right thing. I put it in distance. With me not paying attention to what I'm doing. There we go. 60 is the angle. Say okay. What happened?
It's not Command R, it's just R.
Oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. Thank you. What am I doing wrong? Why isn't it working? There we go. 60. There we go. All right, so now we're going to press O, enter, and we're going to do vertical and copy. And then the last grid we're adding is our up and down, which are going to go back to our grid size. 11 dividers, or nope, 0 horizontal, 11 vertical, 0 skew. Okay, let's align it. Align it. Okay, so here's where we were at, right? Ikra, this is where you were questioning?
Yeah.
This part? Okay, so what we want to do is be in the selection tool, and we're going to zoom into the top of the vertical grid here, and we want to bring it down so it is at an intersection. We're just grabbing the center point and bringing it down to the intersection. Right there. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bring it down to the intersection of the squares. And we can go Command H, Command Shift H. See, I always forget the shift to hide the artboard to not confuse us. Now on the sides, on this one, notice on my sides, on my last one, we're aligning perfectly. This one isn't. So I'm going to move this so it's aligning perfectly left to right on that side. Why this one isn't, oopsie. Isn't lining up perfectly. Did I make a miscalculation? Is yours lining up perfectly, Ikra, or is it giving the same thing I'm having here?
It lined up perfectly on the sides. The top and bottom is the one I adjusted.
Yeah, for some reason this one isn't, and I don't know why. It doesn't seem like I'm not going to worry about it for right now. But that's what you're doing. That's the part you're doing.
Mhm.
Okay. So once you have that, you've adjusted it. I would need to fix. I'm going to need to fix mine to go perfectly, and then adjust it here and here. There we go. So now mine's aligning, because you need it to tile this. We have to have it equal distance all the way around. Okay, so when we have it set, we grab all of them, all 3 of them. We go to Pathfinder and we go to Outline. And what that's done is made each one its own little shape. So we're going to grab the Direct Select tool now, and we're going to select everything outside of our square and get rid of it.
Professor, when I click outline, I don't see anything.
You don't see anything.
Yeah,
What do you mean you don't see anything? Tell me what you
I
mean.
mean
by that.
the grid doesn't show when I click outline.
You gotta give it a stroke. You're not seeing it because you don't have a stroke. I was
Okay.
slightly off. So here you can see something. See here, I was off. I wasn't lined up because I didn't zoom in. So if that happens, the nice thing about Illustrator is you can go undo, 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 undo. You can keep doing undo for up to like 50. So I just undid everything I just did. So I have a black stroke. So if you don't have a black stroke, you're right. It'll just disappear. It'll seem like, where did it go? What happened? I'm going to zoom in. Okay.
I did put this stroke, but I still don't see it.
Are you looking in outlines?
Yeah.
Give me 1 second here. let me do this one little thing and then I will we can look at yours and see what's going on. So I'm going to zoom this up to lock it in. So this is, you have to have all of these intersections perfect. And so zooming in is really important to do that. I'm going to zoom in over here, make sure I have it. Oh, not that way. There, this way. Slightly off. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm all set. Why don't you go back, like I showed you, go Command X, Command X, Command, go back and let's see where it, and walk through it together, where you were at, okay? You know what, let me turn on the, was it Ikra? Is that, who was having the issue where you don't see it? I don't.
It was me.
Okay. Nikia, do you want to share your, let me stop sharing for just a second. And I'm going to pause our video. Give me 1 second, everybody. Okay, we've completed our isometric grid. We've adjusted our artboard to match the grid, which is now not exactly a square. That's okay. Before we lock our isometric grid on its layer, we're going to take our selection tool and select it all. And so it's all selected, and we're going to do Command C to copy it, or Control C if on a PC. Then we're going to lock that isometric grid layer. And so now it's on the artboard. We're going to move over to our new artboard, our last artboard right here. And we're going to create a hexagonal grid. So we want to create a new layer, Command L, and paste your isometric grid on that. We're going to go ahead and center it on our artboard. Oh, hold on a minute. Not on that artboard. I didn't select my artboard, which is why it jumped over there. I want to get on this artboard and I want to center it. Come on over here. On this artboard. Okay. And so I'm going to name this one Hexagonal grid. Okay, so we're going to copy this. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to select it. We're then going to press Command Shift V. I'm going to select it. Command Shift V to paste. To paste it in place. So that we can do it either way. So we have Command Shift V will place it in place after you've selected it. So after selecting the grid, switch to Rotate tool and press Enter. So we're going to select the Rotate tool, R, Enter to get our rotation. And we're going to set the angle to 90 degrees. And we're going to say OK to align this grid to the center of our artboard. Then we're going to go to the Transform panel. I can't remember what the little icon looks like for Transform. That is it. Yeah, it's this one. This little square with little dots all the way around it. That's your Transform. And we're going to copy the width value and switch the artboard tool and change the width of this artboard. So we're going to copy. Hold on, I don't have it selected. There we go. Select it, transform tool. The width is just 1200 pixels. I'm going to copy that. What did I do wrong? I'm thinking I missed something here. Hold on a second. Give me 1 second. Push the rotate and enter. So I don't think it rotated the 90 like I needed it to. I think I missed 90. Oh. One second. I feel like it's not rotating for some reason. 90. Oh, it is. Okay, there it is. Now it is. There we go. I don't think it worked. And maybe it worked for you the first time. It didn't work for me. So this is the right orientation. So transform. We now want the width. We want to go ahead and transform, copy the width value and switch the artboard tool, switch to the artboard tool, copy the width, go to the artboard tool and put this width into it so that you can immediately change the artboard to the same width. And that way you have your hexagonal grid. Oh, but for some reason, the 90 changing wasn't working for me. So you can see here's your isometric and here's your hexagonal. Lock your hexagonal. And
Can you repeat
have
the,
all
sorry,
5.
can you repeat the last step? Copy the width. Can
Yeah,
you just do that
yeah,
one?
yeah. Yep, give me 1 second. Let me get back over there. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the transform tool. You're going to select it, sorry. Hold on, let me unlock it. I just locked it. It doesn't want me to grab anything. Okay, so you have it selected, your grid selected. Remember, we're not in a 1200 by 1200 because we changed our size. So you want to grab the width, the actual width you have. You're going to select it in the transform tool, Command C, copy. You're going to go over to your artboard tool and you're going to paste it, Command V, into the width, and it will adjust your artboard to match your width perfectly. So your height will be 1200, your width will be whatever your width is that you made it, and you're going to say okay. So the two artboards for both the isometric and the hexagonal are slightly different than a square, slightly off by one, by the edges. So it's 1200 one direction and a different edge. Okay. So everyone should at this point have all 5 artboards completed.
For when you put in the different width, mine does it when you go to the artboard to change it, it's not letting me put it anywhere.
Do you have, okay, so why don't you share your screen? I'm going to stop the video. So give me one
Okay.
second.